Hey everyone, so I've come up with this acronym, Theist, Jazz Bass-Theist, in order to help everyone sort of organize their thoughts in terms of all the stuff we have to get together to be a good musician, a good jazz bass player. And I wanted to come up with something that just kind of organized all these subjects just so you could kind of keep an eye on them and see how they're going with your progression. Obviously, it's a huge subject. I just want to explain each one and give you some ideas of how to practice them. So hopefully it will be up here so you can see it. They're in no particular order, but so let's start with time. So time, keeping time. Very hard thing to do. Maintaining a pulse, not speeding up, not slowing down, being your own band, your own groove, and being able to pull along people with bad time and support them. So keeping time, all the stuff that goes along with that is practicing with the metronome, the metronome exercises in Get It Together, the playing along with records, having reference points for tempo areas with tunes in your head so you know where they are, and having actual musical references rather than a tempo, like a number. 163 is this, you're not a robot. You need to have musical examples of different tempos, and you need to get as many of those together as possible. So that's keeping time. Feeling space, again, part of the same thing. Leaving space is hard, and we always tend to rush through the space between the notes, but the space is just as important as the notes. The space actually makes the notes sound good. So feeling space, again, is working on your internal clock and your internal pulse and relaxing and understanding the importance of space. And then I've written groove. Obviously, the elusive groove is very hard to achieve, but I feel like a lot of bass players actually need to get their time better before they can start really getting into the subtleties of groove. So again, it's making sure you're a really good timekeeper. And then you can start maybe pushing the beat ahead or pushing the beat, playing behind the beat and seeing where you like your notes, whether it's walking or funk or whatever style, where your notes are in relation to the drums, the ride cymbal beat, where you hear it. So that's groove, very elusive. Playing along with records, obviously, very important, emulating your heroes. Rhythmic independence is actually doing stuff away from the instrument, clapping and counting rhythms that you can't understand. So digesting the rhythms into your body before you put them on your instrument. And again, in Get It Together, I have a whole chapter on triplets and internalizing the triplet. So the better you get at this, the easier it is to start playing in odd time signatures and play harder music and all sorts of things. So I include all the odd time signatures and hard music in this rhythmic independence, working on rhythms away from the instrument and thinking rhythmically first before you worry about all the harmony and the notes that go on top of it. Walking bass, two feel, obviously very important. Two feel is so hard for jazz bass, and I think it's more about, obviously it's about actually practicing it and not trying to run before you can walk, but it's also about sitting. It's a funky thing, it's a fat sitting thing, and I think a lot of walking bass is played sort of rushed and neurotically, and it needs to sit like it's a funk thing. Boom, 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 and it needs to, and also obviously you need to check out the masters like Israel Crosby and go back even further, and with Milt Hinton, Walter Page, and and even just understand that that jazz started out with just two feel, and it was just the root of the whole music that drove it, and then bass players started walking after that. So two feel is part of the time emphasis. And triplets, obviously understanding the triplet. The triplet is the glue of jazz. So you really need to understand all forms of the triplet and vocalize it and internalize it. And obviously that applies to swing, making sure that you know how to swing your notes, your eighth notes, and at what tempo it changes and starts evening out. Like at the faster tempos you might even out your swing eighth notes, and slower maybe it's more pronounced. So again, emulating your heroes and making sure you're aware of that. So that's the time, huge subject. So next, harmony, another big subject. it's it is a bit sort of more less mysterious than time, but see what I've done here. So functional harmony, I mean by knowing key centers and chords and being able to look at a jazz standard and knowing what the key centers are and their relationship. If that's a 5-1, if that's a secondary dominant, you don't have to know the fancy terms, but you're just understanding where it's going. Now I've put next to functional harmony jazz 2/5s. This is the more mysterious stuff. Jazz 2/5s, I mean like 2/5-1s and different 2/5-1s and chromatically above 2/5-1s. C sharp, F sharp 7, C minor 7, F 7, B flat. All the ways that jazz musicians have added changes over the history to sort of make the chords more dense. So that's what I mean. Jazz 2/5s, flat 5 substitutions again to B flat, F sharp minor, B7 to B flat 7. Those cycle of fourths ways you can land on the tonic by going through the cycle of fourths or going down in whole tones. There's a lot in 2/5s and whole tones. There's a lot of stuff which is in the jazz. That's why you need to learn the music, and that's in the music there. That kind of teaches you clever ways, sort of clever. Sometimes they're a bit convoluted and clever. Sometimes they're just beautiful ways to land on the key center. All scales and all arpeggios. Bass players, especially upright bass players, you've got to learn your arpeggios and all your scales because they just are fundamental into you getting your walking bass together. So many great walking bass lines have been built up from arpeggios and scales, so you have to do it. The Samandel New Bass Method Volume 1 is my Bible for that, with the fingerings to reference and just getting that shape happening. Learning your diminished arpeggios and using them in your walking bass lines, understanding its function from the 5 chord. Again, Wikipedia the diminished chord and its function, if you're not sure about that. Diminished, and then you can start with the diminished whole tone, diminished scales, the diminished scales, and then building stuff off that. But really just get the arpeggios strong before you start trying to be clever with diminished licks and all of that. Whole tone, again, self-explanatory. Check out a bit of whole tone. Okay, major, melodic, and harmonic minor scales and modes. Just know the chords built off the major, melodic, and harmonic minor scales, and then you can start playing modally. If it's just one chord, you can just play on C major 7 sharp 5, and you know it's A melodic minor or maybe A harmonic minor. You can just play on that. You could, if you want to go further, then there's the harmonic major modes too, I think, if you want to go further. But that stuff is harmony. Now, I'm rambling on here. Ears, one of the most important things, ears. Singing. I'm not a great singer, but I try and hum things and hum melodies when I'm playing the bass, so I can have a reference point for the form, for the tempo, and just have more of an emotional connection to the tune that I'm playing. So singing, learn by ear. Really just get people to teach you tunes before they put a chart in front of you. If they've got the time and make mistakes, go to a jam session and don't get the real book out. Just see if you can hear it and learn, and don't be afraid of making mistakes and learning by ear. It's so important. Obviously, having music, if you can read, it's very efficient and everyone can get together and read, and if you're a big band, obviously that's fine, but if you're small groups, really just try and learn things by ear. And then intervals, all the standard stuff, learn your intervals, understand the intervals and the octaves above and the octaves below, so tenths, etc. Melodies, obviously have melodies in your head, pick some melodies that you like and understand what they are and what intervals they are. Alterations, like again, I've done some lessons on this before, get those dominant chords with all the alterations and understand how they sound. Get them in your ear, the sharp 4s, the sharp 5s, the flat 9, sharp 5s, and hear those alterations and all the chords. And now I play bad piano. I can play through all the chords on the piano, so that really helps me hear, and it helps me have an emotional attachment to each chord. So that's ears. Do things by ears, using your ears. Obviously playing along to records and just not looking at the sheet, just trying to listen to what the bass is doing and copying it, or listen to the piano and just practice doing that and making mistakes. Um, also, I haven't put that, but listening to rhythms too. Ear training is hearing rhythms, right? Listening to a rhythm and then clap the rhythm of something, you know. Okay, improvisation. So obviously key to playing jazz. And to be honest with you, when I'm really improvising, that's when I really love my playing, because I play things I don't remember playing, and I think, wow, how did I come up with that? That's great. So bebop language, we have to have the language before we can take it apart and put it in different chunks. So learning some bebop melodies, the language is very important because it's such a beautiful language with chromaticism, and fundamental to jazz language. So learning bebop language, melodies, jazz standard melodies, again, learning the melodies, and an eighth note feel with improvisation is very, again, I talked about it with time, it's very hard to get a good eighth note feel happening and spend extra time on it, and understand how it changes depending on the tempo you're playing. Here, I've put play with other people. It's so important. If you're not playing with other people, try and make it happen. You learn so much by just playing with other people and actually playing gigs. You learn so much from that experience, and you learn intuitively. So there's only so much you can do sort of navel gazing at home, working on stuff. You've got to get out there and play with other people and communicate with them. And that's one of the great things about jazz, is that you operate on a really high level, you should, with listening and communicating, unlike any other music. So play with other people, do those gigs, do those duo gigs, or book the gigs, ask restaurants to hire you, do all that sort of thing. Sound is so important for, obviously it's one of the most important things. It should be first, really. Sound. So especially on the double bass, it's really hard to get a really good sound, and I talk about this a lot. So obviously control and consistency, consistent notes when you're walking, not the notes that are different volume or slightly weaker than others. They all have to be consistent and long and even. Now that comes from the right hand, obviously, and figuring out technique that's consistent there, and you know what's going on with your right hand. You know what your right hand's doing. It's not just this thing that goes, oh, you know, I use the one finger, sometimes two, but I know what I'm doing. But it all comes from the left hand strength too. So the left hand strength comes from playing the hammer-on exercises with a bow, classical exercises, bark if you can, and double stop exercises. Really strengthen left hand and get the sound really good. So you can't get your sound just from the right hand. It's the left hand which is just as important. Obviously on electric bass too, it's getting that left hand accuracy with the note and doing all those exercises. So I've put intonation. If this was just for double bass, obviously intonation would be up there somewhere in the Theist D, whatever. It's so important for double bass, and it's a very hard thing. Again, double stops, playing with the bow so you can really hear the articulation, making sure you have a drone happening, playing with a drone. So you play, you could put a drone as a fifth or the root, and just play the scale and make sure it's all fitting with that drone. So drone. And then also, if you're not playing along with a record, you haven't got a reference point for it, always sort of just check where you're at in case you've gone really sharp. The upright players, we tend to we're going up a lot, so we tend to go overshoot. So again, intonation, upright players, you've got to really make sure you tune the bass before you play it, and use the bow and use the open strings and use the harmonics in various positions to make sure that your bass is really in tune before you do it. And do it with the bow, because you can hear it better. Don't do it without the bow unless you just don't have a bow anywhere a million miles away. And then finally, is with sound, is it good? Obviously ask yourself, is it good? I try to emulate my heroes on the upright bass, Ray Brown, Reginald. I wanted to sound like them. I couldn't understand when I didn't, but I tried to get there. Playing along with records, emulating the note length and everything. Love your sound. It's important to love your sound. I'm still working on it sometimes, but just playing two notes and letting them sing, and let that be enough, and let it be a sound that you love. So then finally, tunes, probably the most important thing, I guess, is just listen to music. you've got to listen to music, and you don't have to listen to a million things on the streaming sites. You just listen to like 3 records, but know them really well, and then take it from there. But listen to music, listen to all the length of the songs, understand the context with why things are played at that specific moment. So listen to music is an obvious thing to say, but it needs to be drilled home. It's about the process too, so maybe listen to music when you're not cooking or on the train as well. You know, as well as that, it's good to have it there, but actually sit down and just listen to the music and focus on the music like you're listening to a live gig. Now, yeah, some boring stuff. Blues, or not boring, but you know, blues is obviously fundamental to jazz music, the blues, so you've got to be able to in fact, I didn't put that in harmony and melodies, but obviously the blues, pentatonic, the blues melodies are very important. So, but playing walking bass and bass lines, the blues, major and minor in all keys, rhythm changes playing in all keys, that's what Charlie Parker did, but when you start being able to walk in all keys, then you can apply that to walking and standards really well, it frees you up. Then the American Songbook tunes, again, it's intimidating, but the better your ears are, the better you learn by ear, the more you can just wing it. I'm not saying don't learn lots of tunes, but the more that you can just rely on your ears to get you through gigs and not have to have your eyes looking at something. Yeah, American Songbook tunes, show tunes, all those great show tunes, Cole Porter, etc. Then jazz originals, obviously, there's a lot, but I've put maybe 5 of the top composers there. I've obviously left out a lot. So Charlie Parker, Coltrane, all the Coltrane tunes with the augmented axis harmony, Giant Steps, etc. 26-2. Thelonious Monk's tunes, amazingly rhythmical and funky and great to learn. Billy Strayhorn wrote all those beautiful, especially ballads with Ellington, and Wayne Shorter. And then there's Herbie Hancock, there's others, Benny Golson, there's others, Joe Henderson. Check out the New York checklist I've put on my site if you don't have that. I've compiled a list of a lot of tunes, especially sort of jazz original tunes. Then I've put with tunes, understanding some Cuban music and bass lines, Cuban bass players, Cachao, Andy Gonzalez, the tumbals. It is very important because Cuban music has been such a huge influence on the jazz world, obviously because of the ties with New York and America and Cuba. So Cuban, Brazil, again, the same thing as when you're just playing your bossa novas, you know, bossa novas, Jobim, understand some Brazilian rhythms or Brazilian, the way the bass can sit on the second note. Brazilian, Bach, I put Bach in there because I felt like I needed to put Bach in there somewhere, but Bach bass lines, obviously the cello suites are great to work on, and some of those just sound like bass lines. I mean, there are bass lines. So the Bach cello suites, listen to Bach, listen to the D minor cello suite, and understand the chords that you know are underneath it. Walking bass transcription walking bass is very hard. I mean, that should be up here. It's just its, you know, its own subject. But walking bass is beautiful, and always understand it's going to be a really long time before you get it together. And I think it's the hardest thing to do in all of music. Well, so walking bass transcribe. So you have to transcribe some of the masters to really get inside the language. Ray Brown, Paul Chambers, Israel Crosby, etc., Ron Carter. So yeah, walking bass transcriptions, transcribe choruses and you know, the whole tune if you can, to get the feel of being in that person's shoes, but also just you know, I've transcribed snippets of stuff that I've liked and I wanted to incorporate into my lines. Again, it's part of the language, bebop language thing. And then I did put reading there, which is obviously important, but I think I'd rather someone just be really good at picking things up by ear than be a great reader any day. So reading is efficient, and if you want to be hired, obviously it helps if you can read. And so I've just lost my. I've been rambling on for so long. I've lost my computer screen. Let's see if I can get back at it. Bear with me. Seems like a new thing. Okay, here we go. So then I've just done this other thing plus. Okay, obviously practice lots. You've got to practice. There's no way around it. Long-term goals. This is a lot of stuff to get together. So don't try and do everything, quickly. Practice a tempo for a day or a week, or just have long-term goals. Say in 6 months I want to be able to do this. Physical notes. I tell my students all to make a practice routine, but actually print it out. Have something like on a piece of paper, on a notepad, not on your phone, not on your computer. So it's physical, so you can put it up there, and it can be something to guide you in your weaker moments when you can't be bothered to practice, or you're just not motivated, or you start practicing the wrong thing straight away, and then you just lose the momentum and give up and have a cup of coffee or something. So physical, something physical things other than notes on your phone. And routine, obviously routine is the key. Have an hour's routine of fundamentals that you really understand, that will kind of help you with the sound or the fundamentals. But have a 20-minute version, have an hour version, have a 5-minute version, have a 30-minute version, so you can just fill in that time. Routine, and then don't just do 6 hours of practice one day and then don't practice for another week. It's better off just having that consistency happen. So routine is you've got to make it like you're brushing your teeth or something. So belief. Now, belief is very important. I generally believe that anyone is capable of achieving things. If obviously some people are further ahead than others, but other people might have different talents that might come through, but you have to have that belief. It's like you hear about child prodigies who are amazing. When they get to 18, they lose it because suddenly everyone else is at the same level as them, and they don't know how to handle it psychologically, or they develop differently. So there's all those sorts of things. Just have belief in that you have your own personality. Obviously you've got to have the tools, like all this stuff, before it can come to fruition, but you've got your own strengths that you don't know of. So having that belief, and when you get to a good level, then that your own personality will start coming through more, and that is part of belief. So belief. Courage, courage. Just do those things which are scary to do. Reach out to those people. Go to the jam session, and like the next one is make mistakes by not reading the real book. Do those things and learn. And then resilience is part of the same thing. Don't get too bothered if you've had some awkward situations, or just get these things make you stronger. I know that's an obvious thing to say, but just have a bit of resilience and try not to be too fragile, and just be a bit thick-skinned sometimes. Again, I haven't quite finished this thing. Maybe again, experience and playing. I haven't put on that part, but I should just put. So much comes from just getting out there and playing with other people, and you learn so much that you don't even understand that's going on subconsciously just from doing that. So experience is should be up there with that part. So plus playing with other people. And then I didn't put equals success, because I hate that sort of word, success. It means like it's some sort of financial gain or something that you've gained. But actually, if you do all this and you practice and you get really good, it's actually you're putting beauty into the world, just something beautiful. You're a great musician. The world needs music and art and stuff that isn't to do with, numbers and money and tangible stuff. It's got to be, art is great because it gets you beyond all of that stuff, and if you're contributing to that in any way, you're helping people's lives. Even if you're not making much money from it, it's a great thing. So it's beauty. You're putting beauty into the world. Attainment, I think I just used that because I wanted to have another acronym, BAD. Attainment, obviously attainment, you achieve your goals. And then depth, depth actually comes from, you know, how much work you put into something, and this world today needs so much depth because so much of it doesn't have any depth because it's changing so quickly. So depth comes from real study, real dedication to something over a long period of times, and looking at music throughout history, studying something that's had a long history, so you kind of bring that forward. You don't just come from here and then take that thing forward. You check out the great bass players and the beginning of jazz and everything, and you bring that to you know, to the present day. But it takes depth, and it takes a lot of practice, and it takes you know, all that other stuff. So depth. That's a long ramble. So if any of you are still here, that is basically the jazz Bass-Theist acronym. So if you're not a religious person, your theism can be based in the bass. All right, so yeah, that's it. Thanks so much.